Soybean harvest has begun in Nebraska. Growers have brought in 3% of the crop, 1 point behind the state's 5-year average. The USDA currently rates nearly a quarter of this year's soybeans as good to excellent. But at Husker Harvest Days last week, Nebraska Extension plant pathologist Loren Giesler says there have been issues. We talked with Loren at the event about how white mold became a problem for many growers this season.
Well, we are seeing quite a bit, and really nothing that the guys are going to do now, but really a lot of them are worried about how they're going to manage it next year. And particularly most of the time with white mold, you know, that's a disease that in the past we'd say maybe 1 in 10 years, but with the weather that we've had the last 3 years in a row, some of our producers to the northern part of the state have been hit with white mold. So I just want to encourage them to really, as they're starting to pick out seed varieties, make sure they're picking the best thing they can there. There's still not a lot of difference there, but there is a little bit that they can do. The other one is, you know, as they're putting in their plan for next year, any of our farmers that are using, you know, drills or narrow rows, that's going to be more favorable for white mold. So look at, you know, if you can in your operation, extend that out to a 30-inch row planting in those fields that get a lot of white mold. And then the other one is, you know, looking at, you know, how are they going to manage it going into the season. White mold's a disease that we've got to look at fungicide applications during flowering. And that's a time where you're going to have to look at that extended forecast, because that's when the disease starts. Even though they see it now, they got to make those applications well before they see anything. And so they got to be at a pretty high risk for white mold to want to make that investment.
So these fields will recur then with white mold?
They will. And the thing is too, like even if they're rotating to the other side of the quarter, or if it's something that's, you know, in there and they've had white mold in their operation, they probably have the potential to have it in a lot of these other areas. So particularly just, you know, if it's one half of a section or the other, they're going to have it there too. How
effective can variety selections be?
Variety selection is not going to be ideal for managing white mold, but it is something that can reduce it a little bit. There's not great resistance or tolerance in lines, but there are a few subtle differences. So just try to select that. This is the first thing. That's the easiest thing to do. And then look at that row spacing, and then also look at, you know, what are you going to do in your plan? If you've had it significantly, are you going to use fungicides in the future?
You mentioned that the applications are useful at flowering, but when do you decide if you have enough to make the application?
Well, the key is they're going to have to really look at their history. So most of our farmers know if they've had significant white mold problems. If you're a farmer that just had it this year and you just had a little bit of it, I wouldn't worry too much about it. But if you've got a history here in the last couple of years that you've had a significant amount, that's when we're going to look at you know, going ahead and making that investment at flowering. Watch the weather forecast next year. When you're in that time, we'll be talking about this again then. But you know, I just think it's something that they really ought to be looking at a plan, you know, as they go forward, you know, down the road. This is something that can be pretty significant if we maintain these cool, wet conditions into 2016.